Welcome, everyone, to another edition of the Wrestling Underground podcast. I'm your host, as always, Jack Porter. Joining me is the glorious one himself, Marcus Green. Marcus, how are you?
Good. Shout out to the folks listening. Don't matter what day of the week we come at you, as long as we get here.
Yeah, there were definitely some birthday festivities that had to be done. Unfortunately, I didn't get to you in time to let you know what was going on. But here we are. We are here for another day, and we're gonna rock it, and we're gonna roll it. Uh, it's been a few days since we've been on here, and since we've last chatted, the NXT TNA partnership has kind of kicked off. Jordan Grace made her NXT in ring debut last night, I believe. And she has a match now against Roxanne Perez on Saturday, right? Is that the ninth? I think that's the ninth. Sunday.
Yeah, that's Sunday's the ninth. Yeah.
And apparently she signed for a three-match deal worth 100K. I'm curious to see how this goes. The problem is that I have a feeling that the WWE is going to treat TNA much like they treat NXT in the sense that whatever wrestlers do end up popping up aren't going to be worth anything. They're not going to be game changers. Not going to be people that we actually are excited for. Brooks Jensen or whatever his name is seems to be the guy that might come over on the next set of tapings. And I just don't think long term this is going to be a boon for TNA. There's already people like WWE's just going to buy TNA, and I'm like that. One, that's not going to happen. Two, if that does happen, that would be terrible. I don't want to see that happen. More importantly, I'm not sure NXT has anything to offer TNA outside of Trick. I don't think Roxanne Perez is better than anyone TNA has. So I don't really see the value in her coming over. She's also proven not to be exactly the most charismatic or character-driven wrestler out there. So there isn't really anything there that I would say, oh, I got to see that. We're going to see the only matchup I think she has in her for a TNA matchup at NXT Battleground. So I don't need to see her anywhere else. I don't think TNA is going anywhere because they're talking about a permanent residence for TNA so that they can allocate the money to going live. And I think what they're doing is the people in NXT. I think one of the things that they're thinking about doing is doing. They're already doing it at the WWE Performance Center. I think, right?
What?
The weekly shows.
Yeah.
They're already at the Performance Center. I think they're going to end up moving the major shows to the UFC Apex Center. And I think what's going to end up happening is either at Full Sail or maybe back in Universal, which I think would be a great treat, at least for, say, a year.
Yeah.
I think TNA is going to pop up and do live shows. Maybe they'll do one live, one taped. But even then, I think that's still a better gig than what's going on now. So I don't see TNA going anywhere. But I also don't see this NXT crossover helping things. And this comes on the heels of Brian Zane from Wrestling with Regret releasing a video about why the Monday Night Wars 2.0 with TNA and WWE failed. He doesn't really actually address why it fails. He more just tracks the numbers in this video. It was still interesting, but it wasn't anything I didn't live through. Like, that was 14 years ago, Mark. It's like we were watching.
Yeah.
We knew it failed, and we knew why it failed. And I
Yeah.
think maybe next week we'll talk more about why the 2.0 Monday Night War failed.
Yeah. It just. I mean, hindsight always the clearest, but it really just didn't need to happen.
Yeah.
You know, why they attempted it and all the hoopla and hype about it. We get the brain trust that was behind it at the time, which that was just the start of many failings to go after that. But yeah, I mean I don't doubt it was interesting because of the guy you said wrote it, but also comes off like a clickbait article out of convenience because of obviously the working relationship right now. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, to your overall point about the partnership, like I think Deanna Purrazzo recently got quoted about saying she know she definitely didn't see that happening, but ultimately what it could do is get more eyes on the company, and obviously she's talking about TNA, and I think ultimately that's what would probably be the best thing for the TNA to kind of go towards is the look, because like you said, we could come up with names. I'm sure if we went down and carefully combed through the roster of NXT names, that could be some viable options to show up on uh, TNA and mix it up with some quality matches. But ultimately, if this I've almost called him Diener, if this young guy that they just showed that video about is who they got bringing in, then essentially kind of getting some of TNA's rugrats, if you will, throwaways, which you would hope is not the case, but you never know. I mean, it's ironically enough, it's still already more than what AEW did, but that's a whole other can of worms. But I think Jordan is gonna put in a lot of work, and she is also not somebody who comes off like somebody that's the the thoroughbred for another company while actively trying to campaign to get a job elsewhere. Like she literally comes off like I'm glad to be here. I'm gonna put on and get the job done. And she feels like she knows how big of a deal it is and how it can definitely help TNA. And also very proud to be the champion because I feel like certain other people might be doing the opposite. Certain people we've seen in the past, they kind of want to use the company as a stepping stone. She kind of knows that she's been built up very well, very prominently, very consistently by TNA, and she's going to show and prove. So I am looking forward to seeing that match, but also looking forward to seeing what they do because apparently there was nothing. I guess, and you know how these so-called journalists like to do. They're like, oh, there's nothing on the schedule for them after like something early August or whatever, and then obviously people want to fuel that with the rumors of them potentially buying. TNA was like you said, would probably be the worst thing we've seen in the last decade, and hopefully that's never going to be the case. Um, but I am looking forward to seeing them, kind of shift things and get a move to like make potentially shift things up, which I thought was going to be the case anyway when they did this big production overhaul some time ago. But maybe it just took longer to get it done.
Yeah, and when it comes to like with the TNA stuff specifically, I don't see them not having anything booked yet as a problem, especially with the fact that there is ongoing discussions about what and where and when the next, like where they're going to be for these potential live tapings. If that's the goal, I can understand why they haven't booked Bound for Glory yet, which was um, I think that was the crux of the report was like, oh, they haven't even booked Bound for Glory yet, and I think that's because they don't know where they're going and they don't know what they're going to do yet. So I get it. I get why they haven't done anything yet. That said, as we get closer to August, you'd like to have something firmed up by then, because clearly you don't want people going too long. But here's also the bigger issue. Beyond just the uncertainty of what comes next for TNA, the problem with this NXT partnership is that you have too many people who are engagement farming, and they're doing it around WWE products because it's the brand. It's the biggest brand in the world. So they're going to have a wider audience because they're catering to the biggest platform. And that means they get to set the narratives. Unjustly so. So they're going to start spewing shit that maybe normally we TNA fans don't have to put up with because it's only usually TNA fans talking about TNA. Now you have WWE fans talking about TNA as if they have an idea what's going on down here. And I think that's going to prove to be a very problematic and very tiring affair. Because you're going to have a lot of people who are going to say random shit about TNA, who don't know anything about TNA, but will say it to get clicks, views, and likes. And because this is not a pro TNA crowd, they can say anything they want, and there's going to be people who will actually believe the narrative, even though these people don't have any narrative responsibilities. They don't have any ethics. They don't have any connections. So I have a feeling that this spotlight, if you will, is going to harm TNA because you're going to have a lot of people who are going to be able to affect the public perception and face no, backlash or any type of repercussions for possibly deterring the momentum of the company. So I do think that's going to be an issue, and I think that's a problem, and I think that's just one of the many reasons why this partnership may not be good for the brand. NXT is their developmental league, and you're putting your best champions in the ring with their developmental talent, and if you lose, that just makes you look worse. So I really don't understand this decision other than, I don't want to say desperation, but I feel like the people running TNA are doing everything they can to help broaden their audience and broaden their reach and broaden the eyes on their product. But I don't think this is it. Now, they did do something over the weekend that I thought was, they did two things over the weekend that I actually really like. They're sunsetting the YouTube TNA Plus program, and they're going to start airing Impact live on the TNA Plus app. Not live, not like they're shooting it live, but like, it airs 8 p.m. or whatever on Access. They're going to simulcast it on the TNA Plus app, which is the smartest thing they would have been doing for years had they done this before. One of the reasons people started to come up on TNA 4 or 5 years ago was because it was on Twitch for free. And I feel like the people who were running TNA before put too much emphasis on trying to get people to access TV, and now the emphasis is to get people viewing TNA. And I feel like that's the right pivot, because I feel like the biggest brand Anthem has is TNA. So I would be very surprised to see anything bad happen to TNA, but we'll see. And if the company goes up for sale, I believe wholeheartedly Scott D'Amore is going to buy it. Apparently the dude's richer than rich. He's richy rich. And everyone knows that he has the money needed to not only buy the company, but run the company. So I don't have any fear about TNA's future. I just don't like the muck that NXT fans and WWE fans as a whole are going to be dragging this company through. It's like when you have like a really cool indie band or like an indie rap artist, and you're like, oh god, like they drop 2 LPs and they're just crushing it. And then like Taylor Swift takes them out on tour, and at first you're like, oh, that's great for them. They're gonna get so many more eyes on them. And then they get swept up into the deluge of the popularity of it all. They're gonna be dragged into conversations that they have no business being in, and that other people don't have any business bringing them into. And they're being brought in simply because this is the zeitgeist of something so large. And it's not Taylor Swift or WWE's fault. This is just reality. Whenever you're this big, you're going to have bad actors, so to speak. And I feel like TNA is about to get sucked into this miasma, if you will. And I don't think they're going to come out of it looking fresh and squeaky clean on the other side. I could be wrong. It could be the best thing to happen to them since before Hogan arrived. But we'll have to wait and see. I think things change, perceptions change, attitudes change. So we'll see if this does as well. That being said, Jordan Grace will be probably main eventing the show on Sunday. Sol Roca, Lash Legend, Fallon, Henley, Kalani Jordan, Mishin. Jesus Christ, she's already gone from SmackDown star to NXT jobber. And Jada Parker will challenge one another for a ladder match to crown the inaugural NXT Women's North American Champion. Obafemi, did I say that right? Did I say Obafemi?
Yes, sir.
Right?
Yeah, you got it right.
Okay. Obafemi, Wesley, and Joe Coffey will have a triple threat match for the NXT North American Championship. I don't know why we have to name things men and women's titles. Like, we can call it whatever we want. We don't need to call it the Women's North American Championship. Like, it's stupid. Shayna Baszler will take on Lola Vice in an NXT Underground match. Lola Vice fought in Bellator for a few fights. I covered her. She wasn't very good. She was more worried about shaking her rear than she was about fighting. I think she had like 2 fights, 3 fights.
Oh damn! I thought that was just a gimmick for. She was shaking her ass and fighting.
Yeah.
God damn.
Yeah, and she wasn't very good. Uh, she had 2 knockouts, but they were like one was a legitimate knockout against Telegraph. The other one was against Colby Fletcher. I don't know if saw the Colby Fletcher fight. I did see the Larkin Dash fight. I saw the Telegraph fight. She lost to Hannah Guy pretty sufficiently, and I thought she lost the Taylor Turner fight, but she got the edge in that one as well. She then left Bellator to sign with WB in 2022, and I feel like it's more her speed. She is athletic, I'll give her that, and she does have a look. She's not unattractive by any means, but I also don't think she's like. Shanna Baszler was a very mid-tier women's MMA fighter in an era where being mid-tier was actually an insult because it meant that you weren't very good. And Shanna Baszler's leaps and bounds better as an actual fighter than Lola Vice. If CM Punk was a woman, I would pick CM Punk over Lola Vice in an MMA fight.
Oh my God! You know what? And I'm gonna throw this at you because I always trust you to tier something properly. Shayna Baszler, Lola Vice, female CM Punk, and Sonya Deville.
So I've never seen Sonya Deville fight, but just knowing where she fought and who she fought, I would put her above female CM Punk, but below Shanna Baszler. But I would only give her 2-1 odds over female CM Punk, if I'm being honest. In fact, I think female CM Punk may actually be able to beat Sonya Deville. Lola Vice had a nice right hook, and she had good footwork. She just did not care enough about MMA, which is fine. Like, I'll never be one of these people like, oh, you just didn't have the heart. Like, I don't have an issue with people going, I don't want CTE. I don't want to be broke and getting my ass kicked. Like, that's not the job from fair. That's why I never really gave people like Goldberg or Ronda Rousey shit for not loving pro wrestling. Like, it can be a job. You're allowed to make it a job. As long as you're worth watching, I don't care. Love it, don't love it, I don't care. As long as it's entertaining.
That's the interesting inverse, and I know this is mildly going off the beaten path, but again, I always appreciate your insight on these because you have a broad spectrum specifically covering this stuff. Do you think the inverse of that happened with somebody like Paige Van Zandt?
Where she loves MMA too much?
Yeah, well, she likes legitimate fighting more than like, okay, this is kind of staged, and I am kind of kidding. I mean, I guess if you take the OnlyFans out of it, because that probably detract most people, but money wise, anyway, do you think that's kind of how that was with her too?
I think so. So here's the best way I can describe the Paige Van Zandt thing. Paige Van Zandt is still fighting technically. I think she did some bare knuckle fighting, and I think she just did a boxing match. Paige Van Zandt is to fighting what I am to Ghost of Tsushima. I don't want to say how many times, Marcus. I just faced this boss, and I lost more than, we'll say, 24 times, less than 100, but more than 12 times. And I wouldn't stop fighting him. I had the option of quitting the fight, turning the fight on easy. I just kept going because I was now mad. I knew I could do this, so I kept trying, and then I finally beat him. And I feel like that's Paige Van Zandt. She's not a good fighter, but she's going to keep trying because she wants to prove she isn't just a pretty face. And I think that's more the accurate 1-1 with Paige Van Zandt. And I think when she realizes that she can make more money, because in pro wrestling you can just be pretty. There's a lot of people, men and women, who have succeeded in this industry just because of the way they look. And I think when she realizes that she can make money doing that, I think she's going to leave pro combat behind and come to pro wrestling. I really believe that. As far as this card goes, Roxanne Perez is taking on Jordan Grace. Nathan Frazier and Axiom are taking on the OC, Luke Gallows and Carl Anderson. And Trick Williams will defend against Ethan Page, who apparently just signed a new contract, according to Marcus. So he'll be officially with the NXT brand going forward. I hate these 6 match cards. I don't like them. I think they're dumb. I feel like the 40 match cards of the Vince McMahon era and the 6 match cards of the Triple H era can meet a happy medium 7, 8, 9, right? Like somewhere in that range. Not every match needs to be 15, 16, 17, 18 minutes. You can have a few 10, 8, 9 minute gimmick matches. As long as it tells a story. Just tell me a story. And too many wrestling critics or fans don't understand what a story is. I don't mean you need to set up 68 weeks worth of build-up. I mean have a match, do the injury bit, have a comeback, have styles clashes of some sort, do something, and make it worth watching. Like the Goldberg Lesnar match from Survivor Series 2016, still one of my all-time favorites. So like you don't need to have 40 fucking minutes, and I wish Triple H knew that because he's clearly. Or I wish Shawn Michaels knew that because this is clearly part of the booking philosophy. But I am Marcus not overly excited about this card. Um, not correct me, but tell me who you think is going to win. First, we have the North American Championship match for the women's side. Sol Roca, Lash Legend, Fallon Henley, Kalani Jordan, Mishin, and Jada Parker. I think Sol Roca, because isn't she just coming back from an injury?
Yeah.
So yeah, I think Sol Roca is probably going to win this. What about you?
Yeah, I'm gonna. I didn't really have a pick for this. I think if I had to line it up with 3 names, I'd go Soul Roca in the lead. Behind her, maybe Lash Legend, and then maybe behind her, either 1A, 1B of Jada Parker and Kalani Jordan. But hopefully they deliver. They definitely clearly want to give women more of these opportunities that we become used to as TNA fans. But yeah, I'd go with Soul Roca as well because there's a lot of emphasis being put on her catching people with that Soul Snatcher springboard cutter that she does. So um, and it's kind of all of them are relatively new, so it's kind of a thing of just go get somebody out the gate real good. So yeah, I'm probably gonna go with Soul Rope as well for that one. Pulling for Jada, 'cause I just look. I like Mi Chin, but she's there as a spot filler. I'm glad she's back in NXT because at least she has something to do, like wrestle, and not just stand around as the club does God knows what. But yeah, probably go with Soul Rope for that one.
Then we have Obafemi, Wesley, and Joe Coffey for the men's side. I think Obafemi's going to retain. They seem to like him.
Yeah, man, he's house money right now. Like Wes glad he's back off injury. That'll be a great crossover. You talk about doing this TNA crossover. That'll be a great thing to have the full on Rascals back in full effect. Um, but yeah, I don't. This probably gonna be a show stealer match, but I'm going with Obafemi. He's just works too well from all angles to drop it off.
Then we have the underground match with Lola and Baszler. I'm going to go with Lola. Anytime you see a veteran on this roster, you
Yeah,
just know that they're going to lose.
yeah, and her and what's her name?
Natty?
Not Natty. The girl that Shayna's tagging with. They just fought Jade and Bianca. Um, the the girl with the Zoe Stark. There it is.
Hmm.
And Zoe Stark just got they title match interrupted by the Ava Fire and the other girl. So she may very well have other stuff to be doing up on the main roster, and then they've been kind of lightly sprinkling Sonya Deville around the women as well. So yeah, like you said, when it's a veteran down there, they obviously building Lola Vice up. She just beat Natty. They had her attack Shayna to kick off this whole feud, so they probably go find some kind of way to eke out with a win. Yeah.
All right, then we have Grace versus Perez. I think Perez is going to win. Sadly, I think they're paying Jordan as much money as they are because they're going to have Perez go over on her.
Yeah, same here. If they don't have some effery involved, um, she cheats to win. You kind of have to. Like just on the face-offs alone, she's taking the L. They're not gonna. And even if look, I'm sure we would both love to be pleasantly surprised, but WWE is oftentimes pathetically predictable in certain aspects. And predictable isn't always bad, but yeah, I like Roxy, but she can't straight up and down beat Grace in any category, and she's not gonna outright beat her by any stretch on Sunday. I feel like she's gonna take that champion advantage because she is the heel here. So
Then we have Nathan Frazier and Axiom versus the OC. I of course think Frazier and Axiom are going to end up winning. Hopefully.
yeah, same here. They're a great team. They're the better team, the team that should keep the titles, and much like Basler or Natty, the good brothers are there hopefully to do the job. I hope they do not drop those titles on those guys, but we suffer from the alternative in other places, so you never know. But I'm pulling back Axiom and Frazier.
Then we have Trick Williams taking on Ethan Page. I have Trick Williams going over.
Yeah, same. You don't go through everything you went through having what it was, Ilya and Melo put him over,
Mm-hmm.
going out the door. Two of your prime cuts, man, going out the door to run him into this random guy that just jumped from another company that a lot of people want to pretend like they was high on that they weren't. That's not taking no shot at Page, but we just got through talking about this fickle ass fan base. So yeah, you're not gonna do everything that they did with that just to drop it off. So man retains.
Yeah, I'll be honest with you. Ethan Page is. He's doing nothing for me, and he's going to do nothing for a lot of people. I promise you on that one. Speaking of promises, we have yet another WCW documentary, this time produced by The Rock. Yay. It's called Who Killed WCW? They already released the first episode. You can watch it for free on YouTube. Marcus, the answer isn't any one thing, but it is one thing. It was the decision of the merger between Time Warner and who was it, AOL. It was the combined merger, and then the subsequent decision to not wanting to carry pro wrestling anymore on their product, on their cable product anymore, because they did not feel that it was highbrow enough for the type of advertisers they wanted for the network. That's the reason WCW closed. I saved you 4 episodes. I saved you 160 minutes. It closed because the company that owned the broadcast rights didn't want it anymore, and Eric Bischoff couldn't get on another network. That's why it died.
Yeah, it's because everybody and their mama got a narrative for it. The thing I had oftentimes heard over the years because I was never a WCW guy, but the narrative that kept coming up was the phrase the inmates, was running the asylum, and by the time things kind of came to a head, it was just too late. Ship had kind of gone too far, of course. But on top of saving me, all those minutes of unnecessary viewing from your perspective, because like you said, it just came down to a decision. Obviously, a big merger would not have been made, and the decision had just been made that it wasn't just a highbrow um, thing. But do you think had the quote unquote inmates not running the asylum and the ship had not deterred, do you think there was anything they could have done in terms of all the pros that WCW had to potentially save themselves out of that position outside of getting another station?
So as far as like the company itself, I think what you're asking is, assuming it had stayed or found a new home, would the creative have gotten better? Would the town have gotten better? To the point where it'd be watchable again? Yes. They had Jeff Jarrett stuff. They had Goldberg. They had Sting. They had DDP, Kevin Nash. But they also had AJ Styles. And I say that, and a lot of people are like, what? He was a member of the WCW roster at the time. He was a part of a tag team with a man named Air Paris. They were called Air Raid, and they were an up and coming cruiserweight tag team. They were both, I think, from NWA Wildside, and they were both developing on that brand. They had interest in Christopher Daniels. They had brought in Steve Corino, who at the time did not debut because he was set for a debut after the company was bought. They had just brought in Jason Jett, who was doing some cool things. They were, they had Mike Awesome and Lance Storm still. Rob Van Dam and Tommy Dreamer were free agents. I very much believe that had Bischoff or whoever bought the company, taken over control and got them on a steady cable TV channel, with the return, eventual return of Sting, with Ric Flair still on your roster, I do believe you could have turned this thing around. I don't know if they would ever been number one again, but there's so much potential on that roster still, and so many guys that became stars after the fact were on. Like Rey Mysterio was still there. You still had Chavo Guerrero. You had who else was on that? Shane Douglas was still on that roster. So, like, you had names, you had talent, you had the prospect and possibility of being able to turn this thing around long term if you had had a little bit better guidance and a little bit better management and a little bit better booking. So, yeah, I do think WCW could not only have survived, but still be around today had they landed on a cable channel. Because they had good ideas in place to get this company back on its feet. And a lot of those ideas ended up becoming TNA staples, like having a home to record television, recording television back-to-back to reduce costs, implementing more emphasis on the lighter weight wrestlers, because before WCW closed, they introduced the Cruiserweight Tag Team titles because they wanted to have more Cruiserweight action on their show. Now, TNA has never done an X Division tag title, but they always emphasize X Division wrestlers, and like that's usually been its hallmark up until the last few years, where a lot of the X Division and heavyweight stuff has kind of intermingled. So yeah, I do think that there would have been success had they been allowed to continue to go. Oh, Booker T is still on the roster. Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna ask about Book, but I thought he had maybe jumped by then.
No, Booker and Scott Steiner are still on the roster.
Yeah, because going off what you said, also I guess that their minds wasn't going to be changed if they just thought the whole concept of wrestling was lowbrow. But how bad was the product that they kind of, if that wasn't necessarily the final situation where it was lowbrow, and they'd be like, okay, we can. It's not even that we think wrestling is lowbrow. This is just not a good product to have on our station. Like, how bad was the product by that point?
So that's an interesting question because WCW 2000 is outside of like the first 3 months, because like January to April, like mid-January to mid-April, about 3.5 months, was booked by Kevin Sullivan. And it wasn't great, but it was good enough because you had a depleted roster, a lot of guys. Sting was hurt, Hogan was just coming back, Benoit, Malenko, Saturn, and Guerrero had just left. Shane Douglas had been sent home. Conan had been sent home. So they were playing with a pretty bare bones cabinet, but I still thought they put together some good shows. The issue was, even as bad as WCW was in the late 90s, when Russo came in after Halloween Havoc 99, it was not as bad in 99 as it would become in mid-2000s. When the script started to be exposed, like, oh, well, that wasn't supposed to happen, that wasn't in the script, that was bad. Mark Madden? I think is his name. He was added to commentary and he killed commentary. He was terrible at his job. He made it unwatchable. He was obnoxious. And not in a, oh, I want to see him get beaten up kind of way, but in a, he's terrible at this job kind of way. And then after Russo got outed in late 2000, I would say that it was still not good, but improved from what we saw under Russo. And I don't think it was quote-unquote good. I think it was on par with 2002 TNA. Take that for what you will as a criticism or a compliment. but I do believe that there was potential for it to get better, especially with different booking. The talent was coming back. The guys were getting healthy. Rey Mysterio was getting healthy again. Sting was getting healthy. Goldberg was going to come back. And I feel like you would have had some really good planning going forward to get yourself back on track, so to speak. Goldberg would have been the key to turning things around, but the way they fucked with him in 1999, certainly didn't help him any. So I would say it was not great, Marcus, but I would say that it wasn't nearly as bad as it was several months prior under Russo.
Gotcha.
Speaking of turning things around, Hiroshi Tanahashi posted, I shouldn't say posted, he was on a media conference call or spoke to the media on June 4th. And he revealed that he had a 10-point plan for rejuvenating New Japan. The first point is talent discovery and development. Before a little color. New Japan has lost a lot of its stars. Okada, Ospreay, Nakamura. Who else have they lost? They've lost. They lost Omega, the Bucks. Obviously, they've lost a lot of names over the last few years, but particularly the loss of Ospreay and Okada in recent months stand out larger than all. So they're trying to rejuvenate the roster, and they got some young guys. Shota Umino. He's definitely a big prospect for them going forward. I'm pretty sure, what's his face from AEW? Takeshita.
Konosuke Takeshita.
Konosuke Takeshita.
Yeah, it is.
There it is. I believe he's another guy that they have high hopes for. So, there's potential coming down the pipeline, but they know they need to work. They have another strong New Japan Lion reality show that they're doing again. So clearly they're trying to get guys discovered. Losing who was it? Alex Coughlin due to a neck injury for that apparently his career ending. Not great. So they know they need to find other guys. They're aware of it. So Tanahashi has a 10-point plan not only to find new guys, but to overhaul the company as a whole. That's where we start with number one, talent discovery and development. Young talent should wrestle more in high-level spots, which is what we're seeing. We're seeing a whole feud right now with Shota. What championship does he have? I could have sworn maybe Jeff Cobb is a TV champion. What does Shota have? Shota doesn't have a title yet. He did just wrestle John Moxley, though. I think. Oh, no, he wrestled Jack Perry recently. That's what it was. Shota defeated Jack Perry at the Windy City Rumble. Or Windy City Riot, excuse me. Nemeth lost his Intercontinental title. I don't remember to who, though. Do you remember who he lost to? Maybe it's not his Intercontinental title. What was it called?
The Japan Strong. Was it the Strong Openweight? Did they do a Strong Openweight?
No. I'm pulling it up right now. He lost the Global Heavyweights. That's right.
Yeah.
And he lost it to David Finlay. So he's the number 2 guy in the company right now. Moxley's the top guy. Not a fan of that. He also wants wrestlers still need to earn their spots in tournaments like the G1. And New Japan wants the best wrestlers in their early 20s in Japan. So they want young guys who are going to stick around, who they are going to give every chance to sink or swim, and go from there. They want to evaluate the value of title belts. It is important to clarify the role and concept of each title. Strong titles will be defended on USA shows only going forward, which I think is a smart call. Company acknowledges that the tag titles are about to be combined at Dominion, so the process may take some time. The company acknowledges that 13 titles may be challenging to follow, and this process may take anywhere from 12 to 18 months. I don't have an issue with the belts. I know a lot of people do. I don't have an issue with that. I feel like if you follow the company, you know who the champions are, regardless of how many titles they have. So to be clear, they have the world title held by Moxley. They have the global title held by David Finlay. Sho has the junior title. Your boy Shingo Takagi has the never openweight championship. Gabe Kidd has the strong openweight championship, which is the top title of the American arm of New Japan. Yuya Uemura, who I was confusing with Shota Umino, has the KOPW 2024 title, which is like their. I still don't get this title. It's like the King of Pro Wrestling Provisional Championship or something like that. It's the winner of a battle royal, if I remember, and like you get something for it, but it doesn't actually mean anything. It's not a great belt, admittedly. Jeff Cobb's a TV champion. Kenta and Chase Owens are your tag team champions on the heavyweight level, while Drilla Maloney and Clark Connors are your junior tag team champions. Clark Connors has a lot of upward momentum. The strong openweight champions are the Guerrillas of Destiny, Phantasmo and Hikuleo, while the never openweight six-man champions are Toru Yano, Oleg Bolton, who they have high plans for, and Hiroshi Tanahashi, while the women's titles see the IWGP Women's Championship belong to Mayu Iwatani, and Stephanie Vakir is the strong women's champion. If you follow the company, you know who the champions are. You could have 4 belts, 5 belts, 7 belts, 12 belts. If you follow the company, you know who the champions are. If you follow WWE, you know who every champion is. And they have almost as many, if not more, titles. So I don't feel like having too many belts is the issue. I think that's a lazy cop-out, personally. Number 3 on Tanahashi's 10-point plan, reducing and eliminating the outside interferences, which has long been a staple, not the outside interference, but the lack of, has long been a staple of their booking. They haven't determined concrete penalties, but interference will be limited. A lot of talk and question about the House of Torture is the reason for this goal. The House of Torture is also one of the worst stables in pro wrestling, and a lot of New Japan fans hate them, and not in we love to hate them like the Bullet Club, but we want them to go away, like X-Pac in 2001. The company acknowledges that fans' frustrations regarding the House of Torture. The company acknowledges that pro wrestling is unique when it comes to wrestlers turning things in their favor any way they can. Point 4, increasing the prominence of status of New Japan Hantai. Tanahashi wants Hantai to be a desired unit for young wrestlers and wrestlers returning from excursion. What is New Japan Hantai, you ask? Good question. I don't know. Marcus, do you know what New Japan Hantai is?
No, reading this 10-point plan was my first time hearing or seeing that name, actually. I thought it was, well, I immediately referred it to something else, and then that clearly wasn't the thing. But no, this is my first time hearing about it.
Maybe it's a fan thing, because the only thing I could see for it was a global shop for merchandise. Which might be all it is a merchandising arm of their brand. They want to strengthen the ties with Stardom. Stardom will still be owned by Stardom will be owned by New Japan as of the end of June. They look forward to improved operational efficiency, scheduling crossover events and Stardom and New Japan events soon. The strengthening ties with AEW. New Japan is happy with their relationship with AEW. There is this perception that New Japan is treated as a sub-brand or is looked down upon by AEW. Some of their perception of New Japan being behind from the economics at this moment. But the truth of the matter is AEW strengths and New Japan strengths are different from development to talent. A lot of this came up because they lost Ospreay and Okada to AEW. But in turn, AEW did put Jon Moxley as the IWGP champion. And Jon Moxley, in the eyes of many, and I don't agree, but I understand the argument, is AEW's ace. So they're clearly a lot more lovey-dovey with New Japan than, say, NXT and TNA are right now. They want to improve the the live fan experience with different prices, different pricing tiers, female only seating sections because apparently men can be a bit of an issue during pro wrestling shows. Special food menus consider number of people in a box. So maybe box seats is what they're saying there. And I'm not being facetious. Apparently, women who go to wrestling shows by themselves or in small groups are harassed by men sometimes. So I understand the female only seating sections. Improving New Japan World. Apologies for the clunky transition. Archive should be complete by the end of next year, and live viewing has been fixed and will be improved. Number 9 is improved treatment of personal information. They don't want their USB drives stolen or lost, and they apologize for it happening in the past. Plans are in place to keep data safe going forward, and they want more sponsorships from New Japan and for New Japan to sponsor more things. So that's the 10-point plan for New Japan. Marcus, do you think Okada can pull it off?
Yeah, I think Dave Tanahashi can get it done.
Sorry, I said Okada. My bad.
No, it's good. I get it. Um, but yeah, I mean, look, I think what they always say: awareness and acknowledgement is usually the first step. So at least he's aware of the issues. Uh, put them right out there. Particularly, I was talking with James Truepenny while I do the Truepenny show, but he talked about how bad the fan experience has become um, with New Japan World, and just the interaction is really the poor interaction, particularly with the archives, you not being able to distinctly go looking for something specific, um, has really detracted a lot of their fan base. So with us being in the streaming era, that's an issue. That's a big issue. So I can only imagine how bad it is. I mean, imagine if it's bad for the Japan faithful, Japanese faithful. I can only imagine how it is for American fans who get that's the only way they go through or get to New Japan. So that, and obviously, like you just you know greatly pointed out, that they need to greatly build up a new you know set. I guess they need their own SmackDown 6 again, if you will. Because you never thought you'd see it, but we now looking at the zeitgeist. We live in a time now where Tanahashi is running New Japan. Okada is in AEW and Nakamura is in WWE. Um, and they were collectively the pillars, if you will, of the company. So times do change. You kind of got to change with them, and I don't know how, because in that I don't know how close Tanahashi is to kind of just more so cutting back on being full time and really taking that leadership role to heart and kind of pulling back on the wrestling. So obviously, you kind of got to start grooming new aces, if you will. So that's important. And obviously, strengthening their relationship with Stardom and that whole thing. They're bringing that up. Obviously, you want to integrate more women into it. That also coincides with make it women only sections. That they kind of help promote that. That sucks that still happens even there when it comes to the men, because we know how bad it is over here. But I guess that's a global problem. And yeah, but like I said, the 10-point plan is a good start. It's a healthy number of issues that, particularly when you talk about the technical issues with the site, they can get that solved hopefully relatively soon, and everything else they can slowly but surely build towards. Also, saw in that they're gonna try to cut down and kind of hone like some real definitive rules, particularly around interference, because apparently there's been this faction that has been all about interference, and I would imagine that's a great detractor. I mean, we know that better than anybody with being longtime TNA fans. All the F finishes they've done with title matches, world title matches. So yeah, I think it's a good place to start, and for somebody who's had a front row seat for a lot of those issues being talent, I would imagine he's definitely going to try to get that thoroughly taken care of as now he's running the whole thing. So I got faith in the Ace. You know.
I have faith in him too. We'll see though if it ends up being a good thing that he's in charge. We've seen this before. Great Muda, obviously. I can't remember his name. He's the one who ran and started New Japan. Antonio Inoki.
Noki, yeah.
Yeah. we've seen wrestlers take over companies to differing degrees of success. I think Mitsuharu Misawa ran Noah after he launched it off the back of All Japan. Giant Baba with All Japan, so we've seen this a lot in Japanese wrestling. So maybe Tanahashi has the fortitude, the intelligence, and the know-how to turn this around. I don't think New Japan is in a bad spot. I think they've crashed down to earth, but I still think they're the top dog, at least in Japan. They just need to figure out their issues before their issues become truly problematic. And I don't think it's going to turn that way. I think they're going to get their fan base back. But they've been on top for 8, 9 years as the best wrestling in the world. They were bound to hit a divot eventually. So I wouldn't worry too much. Speaking of Japanese wrestling, though, we're going to be getting, in my opinion, one of the more exciting shows of the year. It's called Bloodsport Bushido. And it's the typical GCW, Josh Barnett Bloodsport. Ironic enough, it used to be called Matt Riddle's Bloodsport. So glad that is no longer the case. And they have an event coming up. It's a no ropes, faux MMA style wrestling event. And GCW runs this event every few months. And it features usually Josh Barnett, former UFC heavyweight champion, in the main event, and usually taking on a guy with some street cred, combat sports kind of talents, so to speak. This year they're doing it in Japan, and they got a pretty tough lineup, maybe their best of all time. They have, and some of these names I have no idea, so God save me. Fuminori Abe is taking on Yu Izuka. Then we are going to have the first 2-round matches of the Bushido tournament. The winners will face in the finals. And Hikaru Sato will be taking on Hideki Suzuki. And Eric Hammer will take on Takayuki Nomura. That'll be the first round matches. They'll face off in the finals, I would have to presume, on the same show. Singles match between Konami and Maya Fukuda, I think, is what we're doing.
Yeah, Fukuda, yeah.
Yeah. So that's that. 1 second. Then we have Davey Boy Smith Jr. taking on Masaaku Funaki. I think he was a founder of, what was that? Pancrase. Him and Minoru Suzuki. Let me double check that. Funaki was also Pancrase's biggest star. So there you go. Maybe he didn't found Pancrase, but he was a predominant member of it. Santino Marella, yes, that's Santino Marella, was taking on Kazushi Sakuraba. Kazushi Sakuraba, there we go. The famed Gracie Hunter from the Pride MMA days. He's been wrestling a lot in Noah over the last few years. Rampage Jackson, yes, that Rampage Jackson. The former B.A. Baracus is taking on Hideki Sikane. Last time we saw Rampage Jackson, he was 70 pounds overweight against Fedor Emelianenko, and he looked bad and lost worse. We can just put it that way. So hopefully he's in better shape now. Minoru Suzuki will take on Timothy Thatcher, and Josh Barnett's taking on John Moxley in the main event. The event is set for the 22nd of June. Marcus, you excited about this show? I know I am.
One thing, sorry, I muted myself. One thing I continue to be impressed with, and I didn't even know, I guess, that Bloodsport got its beginnings with Matt Riddle. Glad it got away from that, as you said. But I continue to be impressed by, the cards that Barnett is able to put together. And I think obviously. So much of that has to do with, obviously his prospects as a businessman and operator with this whole thing, but also, a lot of these names I would imagine he would not be able to get if he didn't have clearly the amount of respect he does for the Japanese influence with wrestling and just the overall um, sport overall and the presentation of it and getting so many of these names. 'Cause in a lot of ways, we know that NXT does Worlds Collide and I think TNA has been killing over the last few years with their multiverse shows. But these kind of feels like little mini supercars that he's been putting together, and also getting involved in it as well. Because why wouldn't you? But yeah, I think if nothing else, he certainly deserves a hat off. I mean, because he's had Shayna on some of them. He's had, I'm surprised he hasn't been able to get some more. Well, obviously he's got obligation with AEW, but guys like that involved in the situation. I'm familiar with Fukuda, Maya Fukuda. She's one of my favorites because she's in Glee. Um, so very much looking forward to that. Haven't seen Rampage do anything for a long time, so looking forward to seeing what he does. Obviously, like you said, it wasn't necessarily the best thing that you've seen the last couple of times. Hopefully, he's not going the way of what we just got with Deontay. So,
Oh yeah, that was rough.
yeah, he is. It's been a hell of a fall from grace. Because I just had got through watching like a video of 30 of his knockouts. Um, but yeah, so another great call, fam. Obviously, just a little bit of everything involved. And you said the whole thing is like what, no ropes?
Yeah, and that's how they do it in every event. Is it's a no rope affair.
So that's cool, man. We talked about, I think, the one match one of the matches. I don't know how often we've gotten it, but I think one match specifically because I think Kurt talked about it that he did, and I think it was with Benoit. He was like, yeah, I don't know if it was at a Rumble or something else, where they had a match where they didn't hit the ropes once. Um, so just that whole concept kind of creates an interesting thing, and they do the same concept with that now in NXT with the underground thing. But obviously these names have a little bit more cachet, and I think an elevated skill set to them than some rookies and some people who claim MMA but might not necessarily be top tier with it. So yeah, this is another card I'm looking forward to. You said this on the 9th?
The 22nd.
Gotcha.
We got some time.
June is packed with some solid, legend solid wrestling shows. So yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to it again. I think and Barnett probably don't necessarily get the credit he deserves outside obviously the praise he gets from you and some obviously others. But putting together a really good series of quality calls with these shows, I think it's something that's kind of easy to kind of go under the radar because it's so much wrestling elsewhere. But these have been good shows, and for no other reason than hearing you talk about them, I know they're good. So um, maybe you could talk about, because if somebody's listening and don't know, are they archived somewhere where people can go check them out?
I would imagine on Triller because the Game Changer Wrestling, the Joey Janela promotion,
Yeah,
that's who runs technically Bloodsport.
gotcha.
They've had this will be their 11th show. So I have to imagine that if there's a archive anywhere, it's on Triller because that's where I think they do most of their work. But if you know how to savvily look
Yeah,
around for wrestling shows, you can find it.
yeah, yeah. 'Cause, it vaguely reminds me of that era we had when of Dreamer's House of Hardcore series
Mm-hmm.
he was doing. So yeah, which
Yeah.
also has some interesting matchups as well.
Yeah, so if you can find it, check it out. It's usually good for a good 3 hour affair. Last thing we're going to talk about, MLW had their what the fuck is it called? It's their Battle Riot, which is their Royal Rumble but with weapons. Sadly, Matt Riddle won the damn thing. Yeah. On the show, though, they did a match between Alex Kane and AJ Francis. basically for control of, for lack of a better term, black wrestling. The Boomai Fight Club had kind of turned their back on Alex Kane, and Alex Kane was looking for some vengeance. So he and AJ Francis had a battle, so to speak. Let me see if I can find out what it was called. Battle Riot 2024. It was called the Ritual Combat Match. The winner took control of the Boomai Fight Club. The rules were that whoever sat on the throne between the judges for longer than 10 seconds untouched would become the leader in the Boomai Fight Club. The judges were Teddy Long and Mark Henry, which I think is a great get for MLW. Also on the show, and we're going to talk more about that here in a second because I think there's some interesting things with that. Satoshi Kojima, yes, that's Satoshi Kojima, defeated Tom Lawler by pinfall to retain the MLW World Championship. Matt Riddle last eliminated Sami Callihan to win the Battle Riot match for a future MLW World Championship match. They are building up Matt Riddle to take the belt, which is gross. And one of my favorite indie wrestlers, Janae Kai, retained the MLW World Women's Featherweight Championship. Marcus, I know this is going to sound batshit bonkers. I want Mark Henry in MLW as a wrestler. He would wrestle once a taping, so he'd wrestle 4 or 5 times a year. Guys like Gangrel, they've done this for MLW before. I think this could be huge for MLW if they're able to get Mark Henry beyond a little cameo. Would you tune into MLW if they got Mark Henry to wrestle a few times?
That's what I do, Mark Henry, with classic Teddy Long. By the way, that is, as somebody who was greatly watched so much of SmackDown them early to mid to late 2000s. Mark Henry and Teddy Long together is such a great callback. If you know, you know. Uh, but yeah, even a sliver of that Hall of Fame Mark Henry with some classic, I holla player Teddy Long on commentary. That's just that's a good time. And like you said, we don't necessarily need Mark to go on this crazy run, but again, you know, uh, have him going around it because obviously, well, Fatu's gone, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know who all is the big Hawk muscles there now because obviously Hammerstone is in the land of TNA and whatnot. So you kind of almost need get a renewed enforcer, and then obviously Mark is a literal OG vet. Um, but he talked about being in the best shape that he's been in and whatnot. I don't necessarily know what his mindset is, but just the fact that he showed up clearly, he talked about not being done with wrestling. So if they could coerce him to get back in there, man, and get his hands dirty, and like I said, put a little sprinkle of that Hall of Pain in there. That's gonna get some eyes on there because a lot of people haven't seen Mark in rare form, if you will, for a long time.
If he's lost a little bit of weight, his knees are in good shape, he could do some really interesting stuff with this roster. I think the top guy would still be Alex Kane, even though he's not currently the world champion. But I think all said and done, Alex Kane is still the top guy. Holliday's still hanging around. I don't think he's with them currently, but he was just with them recently. So if they can bolster their roster a little bit, I think they could really do something with Mark Henry. We'll have to wait and see if anything does happen there. I'm still hoping for a Mark Henry TNA run. I think that'd be awesome. That's just me personally. Marcus, we're done at the end of the show, so I got to ask, is there anything else you want to check on before we call it a night?
No, that's about that. I think what is TNA celebrating 20 years coming up, 20th anniversary or something coming up tomorrow?
They're celebrating the 20th anniversary of Impact. It is their 22nd year.
Gotcha. 22nd year, 20 years in. Okay, that's again hard to kill. So that's something to check out. Always talking about watch more wrestling. That should be an interesting show they put together. So looking forward to that. But other than that, that's nothing else comes across the radar last minute. That's pretty much about it.
So with all that being said, we're done for the night. Tune in next Tuesday for another edition of the Wrestling Underground podcast. You can find us on the website at realnerdcorp.com, realnerdcorp.com, and on Twitter, at NERDCRP. Marcus, you can be found on Twitter at Paradox Kid, ParaParaDoxKid.
That's me.
Almost like that up. You can also find him on his other podcast, The True Penny Show, TruePennyShow on Twitter. Check them out there. You can find me on Twitter at Chad Nerdcorp, CHEDNERDCRP. The website's Instagram is NERDCRP. Not Instagram, Twitter. The website's Twitter is NERDCRP. The Instagram that I have is Chad's Photo at CHEDSPHOTOHUT. We're done for this week. We'll see you next week for some more Wrestling Underground action. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for checking us out. Thanks for giving us a chance. Remember, as always, to watch more wrestling. Marcus, take us home.